we'll have question and answer following.
Good morning. Today at the University of Texas, we are in mourning, and we are hurting as a university community. Yesterday, one of our students was killed in a senseless act of violence on campus. His name was Harrison Brown. I'll speak in a few minutes about Harrison. 3 other students were injured in the attack. The suspect was quickly apprehended and is now in police custody. There is no known connection between the attack on the campus and other incidents on West Campus, and we will speak about those in more detail. The University of Texas Police Department, the Austin Police Department, and the Texas Department of Safety immediately started working together, and we've currently ramped up patrols both on campus and off campus, especially in the West Campus area. I want to thank City of Austin Mayor Steve Adler and Chief Manley for quickly coming to the aid of the university. I'd like to thank Governor Greg Abbott for calling very quickly and offering the resources of the Department of Public Safety. Director McCraw has been exceptional in making those resources available, and you'll hear a little bit later from Commander Ortiz from DPS. But first and foremost, our thoughts are with the Brown family. Earlier this morning, I met with Harrison's mother, Mrs. Lori Brown, and Harrison's brother, John, who is a recent graduate of UT. It was an incredibly difficult time for them, unimaginable. Mrs. Brown talked about her son Harrison and how much he loved being a Longhorn in his first year here. He was a student in our School of Undergraduate Studies, and like many students, trying to decide what path he wanted to follow in his life. He was interested in the College of Liberal Arts and maybe an economics major, but his brother John told me that he really wanted to follow his passion of music. He was a talented musician and was interested in being a student in our Butler School of Music. His family and our community will never be able to hear Harrison play and sing again. And for this, our hearts are breaking and we are deeply, deeply saddened. We're working with the family, and we'll have information subject to the family's approval on any arrangements having to deal with Harrison. And our students and the fellow students of Harrison are planning a memorial gathering later this week, and at that time we will darken the UT Tower, and we will provide information for the schedule for that gathering. Our thoughts and unconditional support are also with the other victims of the attack and their families. We have connected with them and are working with those families. 2 of the victims were treated in local hospitals and released, and the 3rd is still hospitalized. Based on information that we had last night, we decided to continue with classes and scheduled events today. The incidents appear to have no connection, and we felt that this was part of the healing process and reconciliation, that students should be with their peers and try as best as they can to carry on, as hard as it may be, with the normal academics. We've increased counseling services and are making our staff available to any student who needs support during this difficult time. Our provost office will be working with deans and faculty across campus to make accommodations for students who feel that they need those as a result of this tragedy on campus. Our faculty, I know, are dedicated to supporting their students and trying to help them as much as they can. There are a lot of unanswered questions at this time, and our students are not only concerned, there is fear, and that fear is justified. Just a month ago, we recognized the 1-year anniversary of the murder of Haruka Weiser on our campus. It is hard to comprehend that in 50 years there had never been a violent murder, a murder on our campus, and to have 2 in 1 year is simply unexplainable. We have lots of emotions, including fear and distrust, and we recognize there's tremendous pain among the student body. They are asking, how could this happen again, and will it happen again? And I'm feeling the same way. I'm hurt and I'm angry that our campus has seen these 2 tragedies in 2 of our students. We have focused over the past year on improving safety and security on the campus, and clearly there is work to be done. We've elevated the security profile with additional patrols that you will hear about, working with APD and DPS. I do note that UTPD responded within 2 minutes of the first call, and the suspect was quickly apprehended. We'll never know, but it is likely that that rapid response by UTPD saved the lives of additional students. And I commend the department for their quick action. Today our hearts are broken, and we have to begin the healing process and continue to focus on how we best provide education and a safe environment for our 50,000 students at the University of Texas at Austin. For more information, I'd like to introduce the police chief of the University of Texas Police Department, David Carter.
Thank you, President. My intention here today is basically give you an update from what the information we provided you yesterday. We'll talk about that. I also want to talk a little bit about what we've discovered in terms of possible motivations, also issues surrounding other rumors that have been going around on social media regarding potential threats to fraternities and sororities. I want to talk about that. First off, yesterday I told you that UTPD received a call at 1:51 and responded within 2 minutes. Looking over the transcripts, that was an entry time that I provided you. The actual time that we received the call was 1:46 p.m. and the actual time that our police officers arrived on scene was 1:48. And I would stipulate that it was about 1:46 and a half, so it was probably close to a minute and a half before the officers actually got there, but they arrived quickly and assessed the situation and took the gentleman into custody, Mr. White into custody at that point. What we discovered, and have discovered since that time, is that the suspect, in this case Mr. White, was observed in the Student Activity Center just north of Gregory Gym, exiting on the south side of the Student Activity Center, appearing normal. We have people that indicated they saw him or standing next to him as he was exiting the building. He walked southbound on the west side of Gregory Gym near a stairwell where he encountered a female student, which he then basically kicked her as if kicking her out of the way, from what we understand, and then stabbed a white male individual, the student that the president talked about earlier. Upon stabbing that individual, who went down, he continued to walk southbound in a calm fashion, found an Asian male student sitting at a picnic table there on the plaza, stabbed that individual in the back of the head, moved further south near a food truck that's located, frequently you see located on the Gregory Gym Plaza, and stabbed the third victim, followed by a fourth victim in that general vicinity as well. What made it a little bit challenging for us at the time was that some of the people that were injured had moved away from the scene, so we had to kind of recreate where they actually were at the time when the stabbings occurred. Many students were basically obviously shocked and stunned and saw the police officers coming and pointed in the direction of the suspect. The suspect continued southbound and actually entered into Jester West dorm through the doorways there. The first police officer on scene said he observed him just inside the dorm, moving in the direction of additional students, having also brandishing the knife in his hand. A second officer joined the first officer, and both of them were able to take the individual into custody fairly quickly. Hence the reason we believe that that quick response potentially saved others from harm. I think it's really important that we recognize the fact that as we're all grieving, we talked about that particular issue, the president discussed that, it's affected the police department personally for me and for my officers in terms of having a second murder within almost a year is significant, and it does affect us. We're very thankful that we have the support of our fellow police officers with the APD, Police Chief Manley, as well as Director McCraw from DPS to actually help us work this scene and conduct this investigation. Pardon me. One of the things that we have to get to here is to understand the motivation of this individual. This was not a conspiracy. This was not a person that had a vendetta against any particular group. We have solid grounds and reason to believe that the individual was suffering from mental health issues. He still will and needs to be held accountable, and he is culpable for his actions. However, we know and have discovered that recently he was involuntarily committed in another city and released. I don't have the specifics on that, but he obviously was suffering from some kind of particular issue. We can't find anything that suggests that he was targeting fraternities or any other group, other than he had a history. There was a lot of information that was floating around on social media regarding that fraternity members or people were being targeted because they had Greek letters on their shirts or anything. None of the victims in this case was wearing anything that would indicate that they were actually members of the fraternity. I think that it's really important as we talk about the issue of motivation here and understand the difference between this year's murder and last year's murder. Last year was a case involving a stranger, a homeless, a transient person that came on campus and did that vile act. This year it happened, it was one of our fellow students that was not only the victims but actually the suspect. The thing that I would really want to stress to our community is to remember the importance of calling the behavior concerns advice line. You know, we live in and work in an area that's in effect a small city. I've said this before, of 80,000 people. That's a daytime population. 50,000 some odd students, 20,000 some odd faculty and staff. And the fact is that there's a lot of stress and pressures that that students undergo from time to time, and it's important for us to take care of each other. I'm not saying that Mr. Wyatt didn't receive the appropriate attention or whatever his particular issues were, but the point is I want to remind folks it's really important to let us know, let the Behavior Concerns Advice Line know when you see somebody that is suffering from some kind of an issue, so that hopefully we can get in front of that. And in terms of the off-campus issues, I'm basically going to turn that over to Chief Manley with APD at this time.
Good morning. As the father of a college student who lives on a campus in a community very similar to where we are today, I absolutely understand the impact this has had on the UT family, the UT community, and the concern that parents have for the safety of their students. And to that end, my commitment to those parents, to this community, to my partners, the president, is that we will lend every resource and we will continue to assist in every way that we can, not only to deal with what has happened, but also to work towards the continued safety of the UT community and this campus. An update of where we're at with the investigation right now. Yesterday, our investigators interviewed 37 witnesses. We do still have a few additional witnesses that need to be interviewed, but these were full interviews. Some contained lineups. We had to map where each student was to get an idea of what they saw, what their perspective was. We had several agencies that were with us last night into the late hours. Those included the FBI, the CIA, we had the District Attorney's Office, DPS was with us as well, along with our partners at the U.S. Marshals. Again, we wanted to leave no stone unturned, and we wanted to make sure that we were not dealing with anything larger than the one incident we dealt with yesterday. And as Chief Carter just stated, we do not believe at this point, based on the information we have, that this was anything more than it was yesterday or part of a larger situation. We have booked Mr. White into jail with charge of murder right now. That charge will be officially filed, I expect, by this evening. And we are currently reviewing the additional charges that will likely be forthcoming for the additional assaults that he committed, the aggravated assaults against the other students. Again, there is no evidence that is linking this to any part of a larger plan. And I want to move and address the incident that occurred yesterday evening in West Campus. The Austin Police Department was notified yesterday evening by St. David's Hospital at 4:33 p.m. that they had a male subject who had checked himself in to the hospital with a stab wound that he reported occurred on the UT campus. We responded immediately, first with patrol officers, and then once we conducted the initial interviews, our homicide investigators that were working on the incident from earlier in the day also responded to conduct further follow-up. The victim in that case reported that he was in the area of 26th and Nueces. He was walking when he observed a large group of what he believed to be students walking in the opposite direction. He noticed that something in the crowd got his attention, and when he looked over, he saw a male subject that he described as wearing a black hoodie, white male subject, acting aggressively towards a female that he described as an Asian female. He said as he looked, he observed that he had a knife in his hand and he was pointing it at this victim and appeared to be giving her direction to do something. She ultimately slightly raised her shirt, appearing to be in his direction to do so. At that point, he said instinct kicked in and he charged at the suspect, taking the suspect to the ground. He said he and the suspect struggled for a period of time. During that struggle, although he didn't realize it at the time, when the suspect got up and ran away, as he got up and tried to apprehend him, he realized that he had been wounded, and he did in fact suffer a stab wound to his lower leg. At that point, he returned to his residence and got with one of his friends. They applied first aid at the residence, and then he was transported over to St. David's Hospital for treatment, and that's where we were contacted and we made that initial interview. We see no link between the incident that occurred in West Campus and the incidents that occurred earlier in the day at the Gregory Gym and Jester Estates, Jester dormitory area. Again, we see no link between those. We had tweeted earlier in the day at 5:21. I think you all are all aware of all the information that was being put out on social media about all of the various incidents occurring in West Campus, and we had police officers responding to each and every one of those, trying to determine if any of those were actual real reports or if this was just what happens sometimes in social media where all the information was getting out and there was a panic going about. Where we failed is that we did not put out information until 9:38 last night that we did in fact have this other incident occur in the West Campus area. Because we had put out that tweet at 5:21 telling folks to only pay attention to information they were getting from official sources, and us and University of Texas Police Department being the majority of official sources putting out information. We should have put that out earlier. We were very focused on the investigation and the incidents earlier in the day, but I know that that caused great concern amongst the students, the student body, the faculty here, and the leadership at the University of Texas, that we could have done an earlier notification on that incident. We need help on that case. We do not have a victim that has come forward. We are still trying to identify the young lady that was reportedly being at least assaulted by this gentleman, the suspect. And if you are that person, or again, he reported that this occurred when a large group of what he appeared to be students, he stated, walking towards him. If you are one of those that witnessed this assault, it's very important that you come forward and reach out to us so that we can continue to investigate that assault. And we would ask that you call the homicide tip line, which is 512-974-5092, or Crime Stoppers at 512-472-TIPS, or you can use the new Crime Stoppers app that's out there. But it's very important that we get anyone who witnessed this incident that occurred in the area of 26th and Oasis yesterday to come forward and to provide us information so we can try and further that investigation and work towards identifying who the suspect is in that incident. I know there's also information out there about a deceased person call that we took last night in the area of the 2700 block of Oasis. That information is accurate. We did respond to a deceased person call in that area. The incident took place inside an apartment, and there is nothing at all that we believe is suspicious about this death at this time. And based on the information we have, it is in no way related to any of the incidents that have occurred yesterday outside of this incident that we're talking about now. And again, there's nothing appears suspicious about this. Given that it is an ongoing investigation, I cannot go into the specifics of why I'm saying that now, but with what we know and with what we saw at the scene, again, this occurred inside in an apartment, and based on the information we have now, we do not see in any way that it is suspicious or related to any of these other incidents that had occurred. The last thing that I want to put out is just a request to students, whether you're living here on campus, whether you're living in West Campus, or whether you're living in one of the many other college communities we have across the city, the importance of being vigilant. Be aware of your circumstances, be aware of who's around you. In this day and age of technology, we all walk around with our cell phones, our iPhones, our tablets, and we have earbuds in, we're listening to music, and we sometimes lose a sense of our surroundings. And I would just say that it is ever so important that you maintain an awareness of where you are and your surroundings at all times so that you can be aware and protect yourself if necessary or avoid areas that may represent a danger. So we are at a point now where we are going to continue to partner with the University of Texas and the University Police Department in working towards the resolution of the first investigation on Mr. White, and then the second investigation involving the incident that occurred in West Campus. And the victim in that incident was a UT student as well. And with that, I will actually turn it over now to Commander Ortiz from DPS to speak a little bit further.
Good morning. First off, on behalf of Governor Greg Abbott and the rest of the state leadership, we wish to extend our thoughts and prayers to all the victims of yesterday's events. I'm going to focus on the Department of Public Safety's going forward in working with Chief Manley and Chief Carter to provide patrol resources with emphasis on the West Campus. As long as they need it, we will be providing those additional resources. We will be focusing on West Campus, utilizing a number of resources and assets to include troopers and patrol vehicles, on motorcycles, on bicycles, and on mounted units on horses, patrolling those areas for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until told otherwise. At this time, I would like to echo also what Chief Manley said, is for everyone to be vigilant of their surroundings and to understand what's around them. That's key and important to their safety and to everyone's safety. Nothing else at this time.
At this time, we'll take questions from the audience.
I could ask the chief. You described victim 1 and victim 2, but you didn't tell us anything about victim 3 and 4, boys,
all 4 victims were male. 3 were white males and 1 was an Asian male.
And it would be possible that you might have surveillance cameras. Have you determined whether any of this was captured on surveillance and whether that footage is something that not only you'll review, but that you would release?
Yes, some of it is in fact captured on video, but it's part of a criminal investigation, so we can't release it at this time as we conduct the criminal investigation. At some point, yes, and so that's how we basically were able to determine that Mr. White actually was in the Student Activity Center and exited.
You talked about the fact that you got a response within maybe even less than 2 minutes. Some students who dialed 911 have complained that, and maybe they're not aware of the timeline, but they've complained that they dialed 911, but they didn't receive a notification from the university that there was a threat for almost 30 minutes. Is that because it was just resolved so quickly?
So what happens, number one is that, just like Chief Manley said, there's always room for improvement. We are going to evaluate the issue in terms of the communications. Our first and foremost responsibility as police departments and police officers is to respond and resolve whatever the particular issue is. In this particular case, after 1.5 to 2 minutes, the situation in effect was resolved. However, there were life-saving efforts that were still going on among some of the victims at the scene. The normal protocol is if there is an ongoing threat, an emergency, so this is obviously an ongoing emergency, but if there's an ongoing threat to the campus community, we have a process where we would put the campus in lockdown as well as audible alerts and sirens and such as that. Since by the time the officers got there, but by the time that we actually understood what was going on and we had somebody in custody, we did not follow the protocol in terms of putting out an audible alert to the campus because there was not an ongoing threat. It had been resolved. We also recognize that if there is a vacuum and the police are not providing that information, then somebody's going to fill that. And especially in the social media world, that is a clear challenge for all police departments. In other words, to get in front of those kind of issues there. So we are reviewing our processes there. So I think when you hear the students' concern, I've heard it also mentioned that they're concerned about the response time. Well, actually, the response time was awesome. I think it was as good as we could make that. A minute and a half, have somebody in custody. Even within those 2 minutes, though, we lost a life. 3 people were seriously injured. I also really want to stress the point that I believe, based on information my officers are providing me, that by the officers going in, following the individual, going in the direction where those students were pointing, catching that individual midstream going into Jester West dorm with the knife in his hand where students were present, the assumption obviously could have been a lot worse. So the response time, I think, while it's not perfect because we were not there instantaneously, we got there quickly. I think lives were actually saved. I believe that. Second part on that communication piece is something that we as law enforcement struggle with, especially related to social media that's going back and forth, generating sorts of things and perpetuating fears. One of the things that Chief Manley talked about, the importance of contacting and letting the police know. Sometimes we are not as effective as we are in policing in terms of monitoring the social media world. We need help with that. We need people to call us, but we also recognize our responsibility to get the information out because people are concerned.
How did the officers get there so quickly? Were they on bicycles and did they wear body cameras?
We do have body cameras, yes. We recently, all police officers have body cameras at this time.
You have this on camera where they are actually taking the suspect down?
I assume so. I've not seen it, haven't had a chance yet. As you understand, it's been a pretty hectic past 24 hours. But we will be reviewing those as well.
Did they bicycle over? Did they run? How did they get there so quickly?
A combination of bicycles plus vehicles.
How do you come to the conclusion on the mental illness, on the commitment? Did you get that from the family? Was it his behavior? One's in custody. Was he supposed to be on any kind of medication?
There was probably a collection of all of what you just mentioned. Number one is that details of a police officer emergency commitment are public record of sorts, but the particulars of it may not necessarily be. But so we have information. We also understand it's been reported widely reported in the media that you know, he was arrested by us not so long back on a charge of DWI. Also, you can find in that affidavit a discussion about medications as well. Again, that would be in an affidavit. His behaviors, obviously, in terms of his cooperation with the police, it was limited to somewhat. That's somewhat as you would expect. He obviously was Mirandized and given, you know, his Miranda rights, so we can't really address those kind of things at this time. But a combination of all, yes.
Chief, when you, I had approached you yesterday as you all were leaving about the the West Campus stabbing. So you knew at least that whole room of reporters, we all had known about what was going on. We were reading the chatter. And you had mentioned the department had failed because it took 5 hours to issue a news release at 9:45 or 9:44 last time we got it. And you, we've been harping on Chief Carter for a 30-minute delay in getting information, or 28-minute delay in getting information out. The campus-wide text. To us and students, there isn't much of a difference when you walk across Guadalupe from I'm on campus to now I'm under Austin Police Department's jurisdiction, so I'm waiting for them to tweet, send out a news release, or do you guys have a text alert system for them to?
We would put our information out via tweets or via the official news releases that we do. To your specific point, yes, you did ask me as we were meeting yesterday. At that point, we were getting several calls into the 911 center of multiple different kinds of incidents occurring in the West Campus. We were sending officers to each and every one of those. At the time of the press conference, we weren't even aware because the victim in that incident that took place on West Campus had not yet even gotten over to the hospital. So we weren't aware that it had happened, even though it had happened a little bit earlier. And then again, as I told you, one of the things that we have learned from this and we will do moving forward is we will ensure that we put out a more timely notification, because we understand that the student body, that the community was aware of what had happened earlier. We understand that there was a lot of misinformation being put out on social media, but we need to be the ones putting out the accurate information, and that delay was far too long.
Do you plan on putting Halo cams up in that part of town, or expanding that Halo program to have more eyes in that area since you have such a high concentration of students?
There's no immediate plans for that, but that doesn't mean it's something that we wouldn't evaluate at some time in the future.
Chief Carter, I have a quick question for you. I just want to reiterate, the first student that was stabbed was the one that died, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then on the DWI arrest with this suspect, the arrest mentioned that he was high on Zoloft, which is an antidepressant, can cause some psychotic behavior. Is there any reason to believe that he was still on it, was using it? I mean, is that all part of this investigation?
So you have the information, you recognize, you saw the date in that affidavit, so that's fairly recent. Our understanding also on the emergency commitment, not in the Austin area, was fairly recent as well. So you can put all that together, you can come to a conclusion or an assumption on that.
And then kind of, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but does UT have any way of tracking, I guess, or reaching out to students who've missed a significant amount of classes? Because we were told by some friends of his and some bio classes that he'd been gone for a month, and I don't know if that's something that you guys might look at and maybe connect some dots of what's going on here.
So in terms of, class attendance, I would have to defer, probably have to defer to others in the university to talk about that.
Where did the suspect get the weapon?
That we don't know. Obviously, you've probably seen it or a version of it. It's a large hunting knife. So in time, maybe we'll find that out. I don't know actually.
What was the length of the blade?
I actually don't know, but it's significant. Right?
We don't have the exact length. We have the knife, but I haven't measured it or seen the.
It's clear that it's what you would consider like a Bowie knife.
Are you gonna release photos of?
We'll look at the investigation as we move forward.
How recent was this commitment?
I would say I think it's within a few weeks.
How long was it?
I can't give you that answer.
And there was a rumor on social media that someone with a concealed handgun prevented further attacks. Is there any validity to that?
So one of the things that you know, the devil's police departments on occasion is the information that comes across social media. Yes, we heard that. We have no verification of that. I will tell you, if you look at the sequence of events and the timeline, it doesn't appear likely from the time that the incident was occurring as he was moving forward and going toward the just dorm within a minute and a half. According to my officers, had the knife in his hand and was still going, so I have nothing to verify that occurred.
How were you able to immediately determine that this was an isolated incident, or were you able to determine that was an isolated incident?
First off, no police department could determine immediately if it was an isolated incident. That took some time. Thankfully, UTPD is part of the Austin Regional Intelligence Center with Chief Manley, as well as works well with the State Fusion Center and some of our federal partners looking at it. I can guarantee you we looked at all those kinds of issues there. We looked at the information that was coming across social media to see if it was an incident related to what was talked about with regard to fraternities. And so once we kind of looked at the totality of the circumstances, we could find no credible threat amongst any of our agencies to suggest there was a conspiracy or that he in fact was targeting some particular group, i.e. fraternities.
The student stabbed in the back of the head, is he the one still in the hospital right now? The second one stabbed.
I don't think he is. I believe it was another individual, but I'm not.
The third or fourth then? And where was he stabbed? Like, I'm guessing his injuries are the most serious. Can you talk about how he's doing?
I think the one that required surgery was what actually stabbed probably in the shoulder back, but I'm not positive on that.
We'll take one more question. Yes.
Where will UTPD be increasing patrol?
So what happened actually is that based on the fact that there was numerous protests going on around the city, sometimes as an abundance of caution, UTPD will upstaff, and it turns out yesterday we actually had double the amount of officers on duty in uniform ready to respond if there was some kind of an issue that was occurring. So we're all through, number one is every police officer, whether they're plain clothes normally or in uniform, we call it tactical alert, and we're out patrolling all aspects of the campus. We're also gratefully we're being supported by APD as well as the Department of Public Safety in terms of their patrols are occasionally coming through as well as in the area west of campus. So there's a significant police presence right now.
And will that continue?
So what we'll do is we'll continue to evaluate the situation based on the threats that we receive and like Commander Ortiz says, as long as we feel that that's necessary, we will continue.
Thank you so much. We have a few people available. Dr. Soncia Reagans-Lilly is available. She's the Vice President of Student Affairs. We also have the former